So, welcome everybody to another edition of the Orange Bloods Texas Football YouTube channel. I'm Geoff Ketchum, joined by Anwar Richardson. I am home in the Houston area. Anwar was at Jerry World, but the internet connection at Jerry World not befitting of a of a building named after
AT&T.
after
Should be
a
named
company.
Spectrum.
Yeah, they should have had better internet than they did. They didn't. We were going to go live. We couldn't. So here we are doing a post Texas Media Day version of our show. Hit the like button if you see something that you like. If you dig Anwar's black shirt vibe in the hotel room back in BMW.
No sport coat, man. Let me get. I got to find a sport coat to complete the look.
The man's trying hard. Give us a like. And at the same time, subscribe to the channel. Should you? Oh, he's going full on. Now you have to give us a like.
Right. Now this is worthy, right?
A like and a subscription to the channel, because Anwar went dressed to the nines just to get that like in that subscription from you. Look, we're going to have a good time today. It's a little later. Anwar, I don't even know, he could be taking the edge off by the time the recording of this video is already underway. See, it's because it's later in the day than we typically do these. And it's been a long day. He's got like we need to get one of the solo cups. We need to get solo cups for the show.
After the war room is done, for sure.
Anwar, we started the video earlier today, and it's funny. So I kind of have an idea where we're going. We're talking about Texas's availability at spring. Boy, Freudian's up there at Media Today.
Yeah,
it was Steve Sarkisian, Bijan Robinson, and Keandre Coburn's opportunity to talk to the media, and I want to get your opening impressions of the day now that it's fully over. But it was interesting how we felt when we were going to record immediately after Sarkisian spoke. And I wonder if it feels any different now. It kind of does, which maybe plays in for those who there's a hidden video somewhere where we went about 5 minutes. And one of the things I said was I wasn't going to overreact. I just wonder how you feel a couple of hours later, now that we're doing a reaction show that's not in the immediate aftermath of that press conference. Did it change anything for you?
So here's the thing. I don't think that Steve Sarkisian won Media Day. Don't also think he lost it. I think he just had a good performance, right? And it's some people are really, great at that stuff. There's people really engaged and charismatic, all those type of things. And the one thing that he did say that resonated, even after he was in the podium, even through the breakout session, the one thing that media members were talking about a lot was when he said winning is hard. And it's not the first time he said it. And if I'm correct, I think he may have said it even twice on the podium, but I know this is not the first time I heard it. And you had some media members who were saying, "Oh, that sounds a lot like Tom Herman," and there's people like, "Man, did someone coach him to let him know, like, hey, that is not the thing you want to say around here. Like, you don't want to say winning is hard. You want to say put the T back in Texas. Like, those are probably two statements you need to stay away from." And I think it's what as some of the media members who I were talking to were kind of asking and wondering and pondering. They were saying, "Okay, is this kind of the setup for potentially not reaching your potential?" Right? It's that was kind of a somewhat redundant, but possibly not meeting your potential. One of the questions that we wanted to ask, and you wanted me to ask, and I really thought about how to best phrase it, Catch, was the definition of success. This is one of those things that was your question that you really want to add Tom Herman to answer last year. And Tom Herman's answer changed because in year one, he started talking about winning championships. By year 4, it was about all these other, tangible things. And when I asked Sarkisian about that on Thursday, he started off talking about, hey, when you come to a program like this, you embrace these type of things. You embrace those types of expectations. And then it kind of shifted to but his definition of success is the things that you do day to day. And if you're striving and hitting these goals, and, Texas fans are like, wait a second, wait. Our definition of success isn't Charlie Strong being able to reach out to young men and mold their lives. Everyone wants to win. So, at the end of the day, Catch, it'll be something that overreaction Thursday that we'll react to at this moment. It's like anything, Catch. It won't matter if you win. But if you lose, it's the little things like this that people use kind of and toss back in your face in the conversation.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of conversations to be had from today that are somewhat interesting. The least of which might not be us circling back to the Hey, Anwar, can you turn me down just a little bit? It is
I sure can.
I
sure can.
I think that we've said before that at times he sounds a lot more like Tom Herman than people realize. I think that happened again today. And at some point, people have to realize either Tom Herman wasn't completely terrible in everything that he did, and that maybe some of his personality kicks weren't crazy, because Steve Sarkisian really seems to buy into a lot of the same messaging. It feels like the school of Urban Meyer and the school of, Nick Saban don't stray that far from each other when it comes to how you want to frame the way you talk about your football team. We can circle back around to that because it does go into the winning is hard, and there's no magic fairy dust, and like all of these things, these little phrases that popped up that we're only curious today because Texas fans have heard those words before and swore them off. So it does make I have to believe that Steve Sarkisian is not listening to John Bianco a whole lot. Like, I just have to believe that John Bianco's been around a long time, that he would have prepped him on the, hey, FYI, just don't say these things. FYI, like, just know, like, this got Tom in trouble and this got Charlie in trouble. And I heard him a little bit today, and I thought, maybe Sark's just wheeling and dealing in this one and didn't put a lot of thought into it, and that's how these things can occur. Let's circle back to that. I think the thing that was most interesting today really comes out of the question that you asked him. Steve Sarkisian is telling us that this football team is not going to be great. He's not saying they're not going to play in a national championship game, but he's speaking in code and essentially saying the same thing that Charlie Strong said back in 2014, which was a bit of a downplaying of expectations. And do you know who doesn't say we won't be, we don't automatically get defined by our record? Teams with badass records.
I was going to say teams that win.
Teams that win are like, judge us on our records.
Yeah.
That's how we want to be judged. That Sark went to it's about how we play every day and the methods. And I get what he's saying. And you know what? Nick Saban says the same thing. He says things like, we won't be judged by Saturdays as much as I get what he's saying, but he can say that because they win. Like, Lincoln Riley didn't say yesterday, if they fail to win a Big 12 championship, it'll be a successful season, potentially, as long as the locker room was cool and their methods worked out and the guys really bought in. Like, there's just not the way they talk. When Sark is defining success as something other than the record, it's a sign. When he says things like, we have a chance to be as competitive as anybody in the country, competitive is an interesting word, because it leaves a big window for what your interpret. It's like damn good, right? When I said that about Shaka, it gets to be, what is your interpretation of competitive? And I know what I know it's not automatically winning. That, and this isn't a team and a program that can get by on being competitive against Oklahoma. And the reason why we know that is because it has actually been competitive. That being competitive with Oklahoma or competitive with Iowa State, that was a problem for Tom Herman when he arrived. Then they got competitive. The problem is they want to be more than competitive.
Yeah.
So I think there are a lot of Texas fans. I'm not going to make too much out of what he said today. I'm just going to point out the reality is that what he actually said revealed that this team is not ready for prime time as we speak. So much so that the way he has to frame potential success this season is not framed in the sense that Texas football fans want. He hedged his bets today. And it's not a big deal, but like, if this team goes 8-4 this year, we'll look back and say Sark kind of told us this in July. He told us that he wasn't going to be able to judge this team in this season by the highest of bars. They were potentially going to judge them by like how they participated.
Yeah, it's interesting. So in the breakout session, and I don't know if maybe you had a little time to hear, get some feedback from Bianco, or maybe he checked his Twitter feed, but I think he may be hip that that didn't land well.
Yeah.
And what he did try to say in the breakout session, for those of you that are not quite sure what I'm talking about, he did the podium, and then afterwards, a couple of hours later, he did individuals that wasn't televised to the media. And in that session, I'm trying to look at but he did say something that essentially that, hey, he inherited a team that went 7-3 last season. He likes a lot of the parts that he has, which he's kind of said before, and he likes a lot of the parts that he has. And I have to, there's a term that he used. I don't know if he said there's no reason that we shouldn't be competitive or no, but he basically said that, this is essentially a good team is what he tried to paint it out to be. And again, I'll have to see if I can find it in my honor here. So, but that being said, it's still concerning because, it's sometimes the first thought that comes out your mouth is the most truthful and honest one, right? And then eventually you clean it up later on. And so later you're like, oh, well, what I really meant. And it's like, well, no, I think I know what you meant. So, it is
very Rachel Nichols kind of vibe running in my mind there, where we heard you, Rach.
Yes, we could do equal diversity and say Stephen A. and we could cover them all on ESPN.
There's a million examples. I got 10 on myself. So, don't think I'm just clowning on the random person.
Who knows really great at that is Kwame. He's the best right now. And he doesn't walk back anything. So he's pure entertainment. So it's very interesting that he's almost, like you said, Catch, kind of letting us know, like, hey, successes, will may be defined by other things, which the one thing he's going to learn, Catch, is that Texas fans don't care about that. Texas fans are not going to care about the incremental things. They're not going to care about the kumbaya moments. They're not going to care about, anything other than the wins. Like the one thing I always used to say about Tom Herman was never hired to make Texas fans feel better about losses. It wasn't better to be like, hey, we were close. We were almost in there. If a couple of things bounced away, at the end of the day, you could say Texas got better incrementally. Hell, you could say Texas got better towards the end of last season, Catch. Those last two games, what did they average in those last two games, the K-State game and the bowl game? I mean, you could technically say they were getting better, but that's not what this is about. Texas is not about getting better or little moral victories or little I-9 trophies. Like, it's about getting in that Big 12 championship and winning it and competing for the CFP. And one thing he will be reminded of very soon is that will be how you're ultimately judged. Last thing I'll say, Catch, I'll let you jump back in. I used to, when I first started working here, and you and I would have these conversations and we would talk about what's a successful Texas season. You would always tell me, get into the Big 12 championship. And I would say, well, Catch, come on, man. I mean, this team hasn't really even gotten to that point. So, it's about at least, going from 5 wins to 7 and maybe 7 wins to 9 and, climbing up the ladder, you're like Big 12 championship. And now I know that's how the fan base thinks. It's Big 12 championship.
You've provided me the perfect segue because I didn't know 10 seconds ago that you were quite going to say that. but it really does go into the point that I wanted to make, which is, to me, there's a couple of things going on here. And as long as everybody has self-awareness of these realities, I think that you can coexist with all of these things perfectly well. I think, at 90% of the schools in the country in your first year, the things that Steve Sarkisian said today, it'd be perfectly fine. Seriously, like, I guarantee you, you could just take everything that he said and go to the University of Washington, no problem. I wonder about USC. Maybe they're in that 10% where you couldn't, but considering where they were when he was hired, maybe, I don't know. But like, there is be a bit of a cutoff line. I would say anywhere in the Big 12 other than Texas and Oklahoma, you could say what he said today and everything's perfectly fine. I think that he spoke. If on the surface, Steve Sarkisian was just being honest, he spoke about a good football team, a team that's projected to finish third in the Big 12, a team that doesn't have more than 2 Big 12 all-conference players on it going into the season, right? Like, what we heard today in a prism where all those things are true is that Steve Sarkisian doesn't even have a very good team right now. He doesn't have a great team. He's got a good team. So what the hell do you want him to say? I mean, he has a good team that doesn't even have a starting quarterback. Here's the rub, though, and it goes to the heart of what you just said a second ago. Here's point C. Those other two things are happening, and you have a Texas fan base that knows there is more urgency here than in a perfect world where Sark's got 5 years to build the program up, and this is all a big journey, right? In a world where you can romanticize the journey, then everything's fine. But very hardcore Texas fans understand that recruiting, and Sark made some interesting remarks on recruiting today that we can talk about. And I'll kind of say the same thing I said earlier, which is, do you know who doesn't bicker about the importance of recruiting rankings? Teams that win. Like, they can talk about recruiting rankings in an assortment of manners. On signing day, recruiting rankings matter if you do really well. They don't if you don't. And I thought that when you're kicking butt in recruiting, you say things like, hey, we've got a bunch of highly rated kids. You advertise that. And when you don't, you poo-poo what recruiting means. Texas fans know there's an urgency on this season, that being good is potentially a very bad thing. Now, it's realistic, but it also can be realistically problematic. And you and I have been doing shows for the last couple of weeks where we've said, okay, now we know. With the Kelvin Banks decision, with a couple of other of the big decisions that have gone this month against Texas, on a week of the 4th of July where I wrote 6 or 7 instant analysis pieces and we used 2. Like, recruiting has plateaued to the point where there are some concerns. And really hardcore Texas fans know, man, if they don't get 9, probably 10, it could be problematic for the best recruits in the country that Texas wants to attract. So you end up getting Texas fans who are like, oh, damn, they want to overreact to some of the comments that were made because Sark was real today. Sark told them in reality, that 10th thing may not happen. We may be good, and we may have to judge our success based on what happens in the locker room and how the guys buy in and what we think it looks like based on the evolution over 12 games. Those are all perfectly fine things, but it also means that you might not do this big thing that a lot of Texas fans, I think, are concerned has to happen this year, or the recovery process under Steve Sarkisian takes more time. And you know what? It might. But at the most urgent levels, Texas fans have a very high standard that they hope gets met because they want to win the lottery. They want to be rich fast. They don't want to work hard for 5 years and check their savings account and realize now they can do that thing that they've been dying to do. And so there was just a lot of truths that met head on today. And I think if you're self-aware as a Texas fan and you just understand this team is only good right now, it will help you process what all of this means.
Well, what that's going to mean is a whole lot of confusion, Catch. So let me address the recruiting aspect of it. And then I want to get back to your general point. So I did ask him off the podium about recruiting, and because it's one of my guilty pleasures, of course. And
for a guy who once was like, hey, this is not a direct quote. I am paraphrasing Anwar's general attitude towards recruiting when we first met to discuss a position. And it was pretty much like, hey, I'm interested, but don't you come around like 6 months from now and tell me that one of the things I have to do is really care about recruiting. And I was like, hey man, we got that covered. You don't have to do that. And I just think it's hilarious that 8 years later, you organically have turned into a guy that asks recruiting questions. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's what I'll ask a recruiting question sometimes before a team question. So I started asking him about it, and again, I've used used the same numbers that I've used, how I set up the question, Catch, I said, look, you were at Bama and you successfully recruited in the state of Texas, and you recruited against Texas head to head and won the battles that you fought. So I want to know, how do you sell a program to kids who were 2 years old, when Vince Young crossed the goal line in 2005? And first, so he starts with, well, I don't want to give up the secret sauce here, Anwar, right? And I'm like, all right. That was.
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want to shout that from the rafters?
You would think, but then he starts talking about, University of Texas, a tremendous product to sell. We got a world-class education. We got history, a traditional football program. We've got a great stadium, a great facility. If not one of the best top coaching staffs in America, 550,000 living alumni. So there's really a lot of cool things to sell. Each kid is different. Each kid is looking for a little bit different. And our job is to find out those things that are important to them and explain to them how the University of Texas is a fit for them, right? So then I said, okay, after the answer gets a little bit longer. So my follow-up was, well, isn't that a little bit more challenging when Texas hasn't won a Big 12 championship since 2009? And then I said, it's not a reflection on you, but I'm just saying where the university is. It says, I think every school has got its challenges. Like I said, I believe in our product, or I would not have taken this job. I believe in the product. I believe we can be great. I believe we can recruit quality character kids that are good football players, that are good students, because coming here to play at the University of Texas, it's not for everybody. You got to want to be great. And you got to want to be great in all aspects of life. And then he continues to go on and go on and go on. That's it.
Right.
What? He goes, yeah. So he said, it may not be for everyone. If we have to talk them into doing that, then it might not be the right fit for them. But it's up to in your reputation. How do you want your system to translate? That's what he kind of said. That was kind of the general in a jumbled otter form. That was his pitch.
I mean, again, I'm not going to this would be better for the video if I just lost my mind, because I think there's in a world where the camera's off and we're not doing the YouTube thing, and it was just you and I might like overreact I might nitpick significantly. What my general disposition, I want to be a person who does what I don't want to be like, hey, be level-headed. And this is just a good team and don't have crazy expectations, so don't overreact. And then when I hear what could have been a perfectly just benign answer to your question for whatever reasons. I don't want to overreact to the benignness of it all, but I'm just going to ignore what he said and I'm just going to say it again. Texas, and then I'll acknowledge what he said. Texas fans understand, regardless of how he answered your question, that if the meter doesn't move in a big way this season, that they're going to be in the friend zone with a lot of the big time kids, that just like they are right now. And what wasn't in any of that was a confidence. Hey, watch us. We got it. We got this. There wasn't a message like, I'm the wolf from Pulp Fiction. Oh, you send in the wolf? Well, why didn't you say so? He's on it, right? That sounded like an answer coming from a coach not at a major program like Texas. And that sounded like the answer that the Baylor head coach might give. And that you got to get, if we got to sell the kids on our university, recruiting is selling. So again, I don't want to nitpick too much because he may have just not wanted to play ball with the answer. But in the answer that he gives, I think people who are aware of the urgency that exists, because again, if Steve Sarkisian believes that he's got a 4-year project on his hands, I mean, that might be realistic, but it's not the type of thing that earns you favor to say that to Texas fans, because they don't want to, and you can do that at other places. You can, some coaches can actually say, I want to see what my kids look like when they're seniors. And then you can judge me after I've had my first full recruiting class become seniors. Then you can, that works at like 75% of the places. You get judged at Texas quickly. You lose momentum at Texas quickly. We know this because we literally watched Tom Herman go from riding on top of the moon after winning the Sugar Bowl and having a 2-month run in recruiting that was historically good. And then they dropped the ball and had a very average 2019 season. It wasn't a disaster season. They won their bowl game. It just wasn't, it was just mediocre, following on the heels of winning the Sugar Bowl. And he lost momentum again forever. He never got it back. So you've got Texas fans who realize, like, this thing, guys are giving Sark the benefit of the doubt right now to an extent, but that can go away. And then the only thing that changes that is winning, but then you end up in a chicken and egg situation, which is you got to win before you can get the great players, but you got to get the great players before you can win.
It's like getting credit.
Yeah. And
the only way to get credit is to have credit, but you can't get credit if no one gives it to you.
So I just think that there's just a conversation that we have daily about the reality of where things sit with this UT football program that doesn't take into consideration this thing could grow steadily year by year, because nobody talks like that about Texas. Nobody's going into this season saying, hey, 8 or 9 wins with this team, with a quarterback next year that will be returning and everybody's in the same system for a second consecutive year. Nobody is saying 8-9 wins is actually a really good bridge from year 1 to year 2, where then you could legitimately start talking about 10 wins, 11 wins, winning and there's no talk of bridges to seasons. It's like, show me the money now. And if you are in that show me the money camp, which most Orange Blood subscribers, and I think most serious Texas fans are, they are just so tired of losing, then they would have heard today and they would have rolled their eyes a little bit, like a little bit of Lethal Weapon. Oh, not this shit again, right? Like, I'm too old for this. A little bit of that. But then also, if you are in the other camp, you would say he sounded like a coach that's got a young team and doesn't know how good he is and might need a few years before this thing takes off. That's just not a world that Texas fans allow to exist. They will not accept that. And that's when it gets crazy around here. But nothing that he said was crazy. It just does not fit the narrative that serious Texas fans want to exist in the world. And what that reality means going into and during the 2021 season is the $1 million question. What does all of this not winning a championship or maybe even playing for one this year, how does it feel? What does it look like? How will we view such a thing? I mean, we always talk about they got to start 2-0, and if they could get to Oklahoma, and it hasn't happened, a 3-0 start since when? When was it?
Oh my gosh.
Was it 2009?
Yeah, I think it was like that. Yeah, it's been a while.
You did this. You did the stat, so that's why
I did it. I don't have it in front of me at this.
It was a long time ago.
It's been a hot minute.
LA.
It's been a hot minute.
So we talk about that, but what if this were what if this was a team that started 2-2 and then they lose to Oklahoma, but then they win out and win the rest of their games. So they're like 9-3, had a horrible start, but then they finished fast. That is the ebb and flow of a team, of a season, without looking at the schedule, without getting all too specific. That's kind of what Oklahoma did a year ago, right? I mean, that is the Oklahoma season from a year ago. And now we're looking at that team on paper with that exact scenario kind of unfolding. Now, granted, they won the Big 12 championship in this scenario. Bingo. And they won their major bowl game against major competition.
Bingo.
But at least in terms of the start and the regular season finish, something like that could happen. And I don't know how Texas fans, I don't know how the Texas universe maturely handles a real world rebuild that doesn't include magic dust and fairies and anything other than the process.
Yeah, I mean, again, to your point, you can be Mike Gundy and at Oklahoma State. If Gundy drops 8 wins, 9, something like that, I mean, no one's upset. No one's calling for his head,
Far from it.
TCU, I mean, sometimes Gary Patterson has a great season and he does fantastic. And maybe there's 10 wins, might turn around and do, 7, 5. He's been there over 20 years. No one's mad at Gary Patterson if he's not winning the Big 12 title. And no one's mad that he's not in the national championship conversation. You know what I'm saying? And Iowa State is playing with house money right now. This is house money for Iowa State. This ain't what they do. This is not what they do. They don't know how long Matt Campbell's going to be there, but they're going to enjoy it for as long as it lasts.
It's like the season they've been waiting to have their entire lives. Like people that are 60 years old have been waiting their entire life. Because last year was they made it to the Big 12 champion. You know what I mean? Last year was like this year, they just can try to go be great.
If they succeed, fantastic. If they fall short, it was one hell of a ride.
And they'll love these dudes the same no matter what. They'll be like,
none of them will have to buy a meal in Ames ever again, right? Breece Hall, 15 years from now, is still getting photographs. Someone's still taking him out. Like whenever he goes back for alumni get-togethers or whatever, Breece Hall, Brock Purdy, all those guys are legends.
It really just comes down to the level of free stuff that they get based on this season. Meals, little things like the ability to lease a car, like that stuff. They're just going to get loaners and things like they'll get that.
Yes.
it'll be like if they have a great season, then it goes down to lifetime, like unlimited sponsorship deals. You know, guys will be cashing. Think about the 2005 national championship team at Texas.
Yeah.
Anything those dudes touch is like, oh, they opened up a bake shop. I'm there. Barbecue place. I'm there. Someone's an appraiser for a home. Like whatever. I want them all. Like,
hey, do you need a job? I mean, you can be on the sidelines. Like, I mean, whatever you want. It's you're part of it. You've done great, you know. So, but here in Texas, it's just different. The expectations are different.
I just think that this is all this whole conversation that we're having is what it really is a referendum on the way we talk about Texas, the way we talk amongst subscribers at Orange Bloods and on social media about this program is not the way Steve Sarkisian talked about his program today.
Yeah.
And there's just an inability to merge those two things willingly. The people that aren't on that, this is a process and we're going to be judged by non-win-loss means, like those people don't want to conform. They don't want to come to a place where it's like, okay, we'll moral victory it up this year. I'm okay with that. They're not going to do that.
No.
And there will be people who will be rational at some point. This team, if they start slow, people will rationally be able to say, well, we do have a young quarterback, and this is yet another changeover of coordinators on both sides of the ball. And we did lose our pass rusher, and we didn't have a proven passing game. I can make the laundry list of reasons why this team doesn't go 9-3 or 10-2, and it's all very reasonable and rational. And I think Steve Sarkisian off the record would go, yeah, man, the stuff we're dealing with, a pass rush. I got you and Ketch arguing about Ray Thornton on your YouTube videos. You do realize there's a world where one day we're competing for championships and you guys aren't bickering about guys that aren't going to play in the NFL one day. Like, that's what we do now.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Which, by the way, he did pump up Ray Thornton again today.
Of course.
Yes.
All of those incoming guys got hyped up from the South.
Oh, included it and Keandre Coburn gave Ben Davis a lot of love.
Hey,
because that's a guy who's able to tell them this is what happened at Bama and being able to implement. This is how you be implemented here.
Well, and I think that, if you're really searching for a benefit of a guy like Ben Davis being in the program, he may not be a great player, but by all accounts, he's a good dude. Like, no, everybody that talked about him at Alabama talked about him through the prism of how effective he was as a player, but everybody had really nice things to say about him. And it doesn't surprise me that he would show up, and it's like a guy that's been in the major leagues who gets demoted down to AA. Mm-hmm. He just knows what professionalism looks like. He knows what it looks like at the highest level to have success. And when you go to a place that hasn't had it, you see it right away. You just see it. You're like, oh, that doesn't happen at Bama. And whether it's the reason why they either win or lose, it doesn't matter. All of the little differences and nuances a guy like that will say. And, if the guy's got backbone, if the guy is a little bit of an alpha personality, he won't be afraid to say, no. This is not the way it needs to be done. And I think one of the positives you might say about having for Keandre Coburn, a senior, to feel comfortable enough to acknowledge that, I think it's good for Texas. Yeah. I think what you'd be worried about, and in a year where you have a number of transfers come in, is the buy-in and how quickly they can mesh with their team. I think it's a real compliment to the group of guys that Sark has to work with, that every single guy that's come in has earned rave reviews for mostly the leadership things that we're talking about, because you can't judge them on their play yet, but that they've been so willing to let new guys come in and potentially infuse some good ideas. It's hard for players to do that with coaches sometimes, let alone players. It's an optimistic sign, I think, if you're a fan of the team, the players acknowledging each other in this way, I think's one of the positives from today. I thought that talk was really revealing in a very positive way for the team.
And the other thing that what Coburn was saying, we only got two players. We got Coburn and Bijan. And one of the things that Coburn was saying is like when it was the Ben Davis, Ray Thornton, Ovi Ogofu, like he said, they came from programs that had success, and competing for national titles. So they're actually like are listening to what these guys have to say. He gave it a good example, I think, of Ray Thornton being a guy who loves to work out. He says, Ray Thornton is a guy that he said that, they'll have a practice and Ray will say to them, okay, hey, do you want, Coburn, you want to come back at 2:00 and let's lift him some weights? And he's like, are you kidding me? We just did practice. He goes, all right, well, let's come back, right? And then he said last night, he said he was either leaving the facility or driving past the facility, and he saw Thornton's car out there at 10:00 at night, right? So at the end of the day, those guys come from programs where they know what work looks like, right? They know what the effort that needs to go in. And so, your hope is, if you're a Texas fan, and some of the positives, is that some of that spills in for these guys who, let's just be honest, they don't necessarily know how to win consistently. They know how to win every once in a while. But when we're talking about putting it together from week 1 to week 12, and you look at all the little pitfalls, whether it's last season or TCU, Oklahoma State, and of course, Oklahoma, there's like a lot of little things that happen. That's the thing that Tom Herman was always about, is they were competitive, back to the key word, and they were always in the games, but they just couldn't pull it off. So if you're looking for a positive, that's one. Here's another one, Ketch, I'll give you. We'll have it in the war room later, that Sarkisian said that basically he finally admitted that Bijan will be his workhorse. Finally came out and said it after all the song and dance for months, after kind of, I don't know, Roshan's really cool. And then, we got Keelan now, he's in here. And even back in spring, Daniel Young is here. He finally said, you know what? He literally pulled out the stats. Said, every year I've been a coach, I've always had a 1,000-yard rusher. And he talked about the benefit of having a guy that guys can know and lean on and trust. And and look, at the end of the day, he had a sophomore running back come to Big 12 media days. Yeah, because you've done this long enough to know. Even Lincoln Riley wouldn't let Spencer Rattler come to Big 12 media days because he wasn't a quote unquote upperclassman. And he's going to be the #1 overall pick in the draft, more than likely, if not top 10. So your indication where Sark is like, yeah, I'm going to have Bijan there, that tells you all you need to know about his workload, but then he also confirmed it.
Who else could they have let on the offensive side of the ball come to Big 12 Media Day? If there had not been Bijan, who would it have been?
If he just wanted to go the upperclassman route,
you can't bring Derek Kerstetter. You can't.
I mean, Andrew Beck went to a media day, didn't he?
I block out the Andrew Beck.
I feel like Andrew Beck went to a Big 12 media day at some point. I mean, because you would have to go super senior, right? You have to go Kerstetter or Okafor. I mean, if you're just going to go from upperclassmen.
Oh, sorry for that visceral reaction there. That was as organic and honest as it gets.
Yeah, it was very organic and honest. Because outside of that, I mean, yeah, I mean, you can't do it in the quarterbacks. I mean, maybe you could have done the tight end potentially, Cade Brewer.
I mean, in the end, it had to be Bijan. You couldn't justify Jordan yet over Bijan.
Yeah.
Even if both are kind of expected to have the same kind of breakout type seasons. I mean, both are expected to be #1s. Okay. Let me ask you this. We'll wrap up.
Okay.
Just everybody, if you're this deep into the video, thank you for watching. We will have exhaustive coverage on all of this at orangebloods.com in the war room tonight. So I don't want to try to bleed everything into the video. So I'll just ask this and we'll wrap it up. Give me 2 more things, random, whatever you want them to be. And I don't want to hear about Mike Gundy's mullet. We're just not being there. We're gonna skip
we talked about that.
We're gonna skip it. We're not gonna give it. He tried to cut it for the attention, and we're not gonna do it. I see what he tried to do. 2 things from today that somewhat stand out to wrap us up.
I'll there's not too much from the other perspectives, right? I mean, Kansas didn't show up because they had technical plane issues, which, by the way, I'm always grateful. Catch, I don't know about you, whenever I fly, if they say like we can't take off because we got to work on the mechanics, got to work on something, I'm like, please work on it now. I will sit here and chill. So I'm always a person like I will never complain. So Kansas didn't make it. I don't think Gundy really said anything that moved, the needle, to me. Matt Campbell spoke, but I didn't actually. Matt Campbell was the other day. I tried to go through who was today. Baylor.
If you don't have 2, you don't have to. Well, I won't make you struggle for it.
I would just say I thought Bijan. Overall, I thought Bijan was impressive. Like I just being able to talk to him. I think he is a guy that will be able to be the face of the program. I think Steve Sarkisian is setting him up to be the face of the program. He's a guy that I think gives the right answers to just about everything. I think Texas fans, once they see him more this year, he will become extremely likable. One thing Sarkisian said about him, he said, because there's a Reggie Bush comparison now with Bijan. And Bijan actually revealed that the reason why he wears number 5 is because of Reggie Bush. And that's because that's one of his idols. And Sarkisian said that one thing that reminds him of Reggie Bush when he looks at is Bijan is the one stop ability, just the one cut to be able to run, use that one foot, and then still not lose any momentum until still keep the speed going. And, I've been thinking for the longest time, what's the best, comparison for him? And when you think about it, you're like, oh, he can do that.
So you know what? Tomorrow's video is, can Bijan Robinson be Reggie Bush?
I like it. We could definitely do that.
That's a layup.
That is, and it's a great question, especially with Stark and USC connections and everything. So I just the Bijan stuff. And here's the last thing I will say, Ketch, is that he revealed that he only averaged about 17 touches per game in high school. And then somebody came up and someone said, well, you only had 9 in last season, only average of 9. So, but when he's asked about like being the workload back and does it bother him that he doesn't get like a billion carries, he was like, I only got 17 in high school. And so his deal is, let's make the most of the carries that I do get. So I thought that part was, very interesting. In the last day, I just thought Coburn, he felt like the defensive line was probably the best unit on the entire team. And he feels like they've got a bunch of guys. He thinks Tavonte Sweat is a huge, huge man. And they're pretty hype and excited about him. So, of course, with Ojomo, Alfred Collins, like he's really excited about that. And he also noted that last thing, and we'll have this more with Christian Jones, is just different level for him. Just feels like that guy is a night and day from what he used to be. So, defensive line, those type of things. And then I'll flush it out, have some more in the war room. But by the way, if you don't know what the war room is, it's our insider information column that we do once a week, every Thursday night. It's on Orange Blood. So a lot of the insight, you get a lot of some of the generic stuff here. You get more specifics when you're on Orange Blood. So you guys remember when I told you to sign up. So don't tell Catch. I don't know if you saw that video, but just remember the secret I told you guys, and you'll get there soon enough.
I have no idea what he's talking about.
I know you don't watch the videos. It's great. Well, I can say whatever I want.
Because I'm usually in all of the videos. So no, I am not narcissistic enough that after I've done the videos, I'm like, oh, now let me sit down and watch.
It was a video you weren't in.
Now I can, duh. Yeah, I probably don't watch those either, though. But
I
you
gave
guys,
people a hint, a helpful hint. I said, hey, look, I want you to sign up for Orange Bloods. But here, I'm going to give you a helpful hint. In August, that's when we start giving away the free stuff.
yeah,
Just hold off for August, and I guarantee you'll get the hookup. So just keep watching, be patient. I said, I don't want your money now. We'll come.
you're basically saying it's like buying a would-be Christmas gift in September or something, like wait for the holiday sales. You got to wait till the day after the Black Friday sales.
And you'll
Fair
get
enough.
Fair enough.
Hey, look, for myself and Anwar Richardson, thank you for watching the video. One more reminder, we would love a like. We would love a subscription to the channel, in addition to a subscription to the website. Until tomorrow, where we've already told you what thing we will be talking about is Reggie Bush. The right comparison? Is that the ceiling for Bijan Robinson?
Love it.
We will talk about that tomorrow. Until then, you guys be good to each other. Later.